Cool. Hello.
Hello. Michael, I'm so grateful that you spent some time with us today. So welcome to the High Performance Mindset. Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm stoked to be here. Thank you for including me in your community and what you're doing. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm really excited. We were supposed to be doing this live. I was supposed to yesterday go to Pasadena and speak at a figure skating conference to coaches this morning and then head to your office and do this live. But I think this is a perfect time that we're having this conversation, particularly what's going on in the world right now. And I think people need these strategies more than ever. So to get us started, I'd love for you to tell people about your passion and what you do.
Oh, cool. That's a fun way to start. My passion is related to my purpose. So my purpose for me in life is to help people understand how to condition and train their mind to live in the present moment more often. And the reason that's meaningful to me is because that is where high performance happens, but it's where wisdom is revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I struggled with as a kid. When I say kid, like a high school age, high school, college age. And so I know what it feels like to be constricted and have like this vice grips around freedom, internal freedom. And so that's my purpose. My passion though is different. My passion is, I see passion this way, is that it's not the thing I do, but it's how I do the things I do. And so I want to live with passion and not do things just that I'm passionate about. So I hope that's not too nerdy. I'm thin slicing the words just a little bit, but
For sure.
So that's it. So for me, it's about like living in the present moment more often and all the skills and strategies to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then to live, in a vibrant way, a la passion.
So I think given what's happening in our world right now, living in the present is more important than ever. If you're anything like me, I noticed myself feeling a lot of fear last week, spending a lot of time, or too much time, at least in my normal day-to-day, thinking about the future. So, given all the changes and the adversity people are experiencing right now, I think it's more important than ever to train your mind. So what would be a strategy, maybe a top strategy or tool you'd suggest people to use right now?
Oh, I love the question because let me just do the setup first, and then I want to hear, how you think about it as well. But
Yeah.
the first order business is awareness. And so like,
Right.
there's no right or wrong. There's like,
Right.
what's happening for you as a man, as a woman in life, and noticing those sensations and then being able to pivot to adjust. And
Yes.
so the first order business is like awareness. It kind of begins and ends with awareness, right? But awareness of how it's going, awareness of the feelings, awareness of the sensations, and then having the skills to be able to adjust. So, right now what's happening for people is that, the uncertainty, I've got like 15 things I want to say, but let me start with this, is that athletes in general are very practiced at working with uncertainty. So I think we have a lot to learn from athletic minded and the science of sports psychology, because it really does center around optimizing the way that we engage with uncertain outcomes. And so athletes don't know, how the outcome is going to go. So they practice it and they're good at it for the most part, maybe better than the rest of the population, other than, special operators and some folks that really deal with the unknown and consequential environments. But so I think that athletes, we have a lot to learn from our science and athletes and coaches right now. And the two levels of uncertainty that people are struggling with, that I'm struggling with and others, is the uncertainty about finances.
Right.
It's kind of what makes this professional world work. And it's great uncertainty right now. And then the other uncertainty is on health. And so for me, like awareness first, what's happening?
Yeah.
What are my thoughts? What are my emotions that are taking place? And then how do I adjust? And I think I know that you know this, but just as a footnote, that anxiety is this excessive worry about what could go wrong.
Right.
Now, that's very different than thinking about what could go wrong.
Right.
And it's really good to think about strategies of, if this happens, then that, and if this happens, then that. But when it becomes pervasive and it's a bit like this merry-go-round of the same types of thoughts swirling, and we find ourselves in a compromised state, and both from an immunity standpoint as well as a functional standpoint. And so when I'm too far out there, I go, oh, okay, that's right, because I'm up here and I'm not kind of taking action. So what are the actions I can do today?
Yeah.
If that still feels too far away, like what are the actions I can take this hour? And if that feels like it's a little bit too big, then okay, what are the actions I can take right now? And then I just kind of commit to like what would be the most optimal or the best choice I could make from a thought perspective or an action perspective. And so it's like, that's how I reduce the options and come down to something concrete that I can do right now.
Yeah. I have found myself last week, you're right, there's a lot of unknowns with people's finances and, what you should be doing at that, especially last week, what you shouldn't be doing, who you should stay in contact with, who you shouldn't. You just, so many changes to our environment and our lives. My kids are home now. They weren't before. My husband is a school principal. So, just the changes he had to go through. What I have found to be most helpful for me is, of course, awareness. And then I'm just getting my mind back to what I'm grateful for. And that's helped me. And there's so many things I'm grateful for just about my family and this time to spend with my family. And I'm grateful for a home to keep me warm. I'm grateful that this is bringing us together and it's allowing us to, have deeper relationships with people or choose to do that. But I like what you're saying in terms of awareness and that starts there. I really enjoyed, Michael, your ASP presentation this year. And I took quite a bit of notes. And there was one thing that you told me, or you told us, I thought you were talking to me.
Oh, that's always fun when we hit that mark, right? Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for the compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. But you said something like this, and you said, can you be yourself in every situation, under every circumstance? And when I was sitting listening to you, I, at that point, said no. I was like, I can't be. And particularly where I was struggling at the time was really ego-oriented environments, right? And I have spent 4 years working with the Minnesota Vikings. So you kind of think like, well, it's actually the place that I thrive the most in like these ego-oriented environments, but it's hard to be yourself. So I went on this quest since September to try to be myself in every situation. And I had an opportunity, let's see, it would be in January to speak to 40 NFL coaches. And my only goal was to be myself. And it was interesting. I walk in the room and body language, right? They're kind of sitting like this. One guy had his like hands all the way up his armpits like this, just so closed off. And in that moment, I could have easily been concerned about what they were thinking about me, right? Instead of that I'm here for a reason and deliver these powerful strategies that I've been learning, that I've been observing. And really, I went back to my only goal is to be myself. So I thank you for that because it really has helped me do this work a little bit more, for sure, authentically. And I think I just show up in a more present. That's how I would describe it. And so what I'd love for you to share with other people who are listening is, can you be yourself in every situation under every circumstance? What does that mean to you? And how have you done that in really, really ego masculine environments?
Yeah, that's cool. Good. Well, first of all, nice work. Like setting that that goal to be about it in those environments, and then having the skills to back it up, if you will. So nice work there. What does it mean? It means to know who you are, and when you know who you are, that's the kind of the big container to get, or the big rock to get in the container, and so that takes a long time.
Yeah.
That takes, and there's 3 ways of self-discovery that I found to be really powerful.
Okay.
And as a general framework, self-discovery is sitting with yourself and, non-critically, non-judgmentally, just observing and learning, and that's where the art and skill of mindfulness come into play. And then the other is writing. And writing creates this forcing function to choose words in your native language to say, it's this. No, it's not that, it's this. And it's this forcing function. And if we're not careful, it sounds so 5th graderish, but it's really a powerful medium. And then if you can't get with those two, which ideally you do all three of these, if you can't get with those two though, sitting with somebody that is wise, a wise man or a wise woman.
Yeah.
It could be somebody on your neighborhood. It could be somebody in your tribe. It could be somebody that you hire, like a psychologist, if they, can help you out there. But it's those three functions to really understand who you are. And then back in the skills, the mental skills to be about it. And I think just like with just about everything that we want to do as humans, setting the, having a really clear vision, like, okay, this is what it looks like, and this is how I'm going to do it. And then practicing it on a regular basis. And then when you practice it, like, let's say it's not with the NFL coach, like leaning back in his chair, but you practice it in your living room, practice it walking down the street, practice it in small rooms, practice it in safe environments, and then more rugged environments. And then before you know it, over time, it's like you just are yourself. And it's, I'll tell you, there's a lot of freedom there.
Yeah, there's a lot of freedom there to not worry about what other people think and to be yourself. And so tell us a little bit about your journey in terms of doing that, and specifically in maybe these more masculine ego environments like the NFL or other places that maybe you've been.
I think it's, I'm not sure for me if it's like the masculine piece, but I think it's it's going into environments where people are highly skilled. And they've got a real strong point of view. They tend to be more correct with their opinions and ideas than wrong. And they've been tested. So going into those environments, independent of gender, that it's like, okay, well, at some point, we all need to learn. And that goes for that person and me. And so creating an environment of learning is kind of the first place that I notice it really helps get into that place where we can all explore and get better and grow and be ourselves. But when it's not those environments and it's opinionated and it is critiqued, or there's high criticalness in the environments, that's where it's trickier. So, but the commitment is to not let the external dictate the internal. And I'll tell you, I've been in those environments a lot. And whether it's the NFL or it is, stuff that in the backcountry we're doing in action sports when the athletes are the best in the world, or it's musicians who, they fill up in stadiums within 10 minutes of announcing their own tour. Like, they're good. They're really good. They know their stuff. And so it's not trying to be anything other than be the person that you are. And hopefully when we really strip it down, it's like we're learners. And so that's what helps me, is get into that framework, to be a learner, to be a beginner, be curious, but also know what I do know to be true, and the things that I don't know to be excited to learn. And I feel like that is this breath of fresh air for many environments. And then the second part of that is it gets tricky when your relationship with them is connected to their outcome. And at the same time, it's connected to your outcome. And so detangling that is really an important process. And the detangling is like, hey, listen, I'm going to hold up a mirror. Sometimes you're going to hear and see things you don't like to see, but I'm going to do that. And I'm also going to be, I'm going to have that courage to say, I don't get it. That doesn't sound logical. It doesn't sound like you. It doesn't seem like that's something that seems reasonable even. And, like, sometimes say no, like that doesn't work for me either. And so having that barometer to be able to hold up a mirror and honestly reflect, and then have a gauge of what's okay, what's not okay, what doesn't seem okay, and explore that too. So I think that that's a breath of fresh air for people who are best in the world at what they do. Most people, my experience is most people are craving that, and most of their community are not giving that to them. And so it takes courage, it takes vulnerability, it takes some risks. So those are some of the ways I think about it. But there's so many ways to get at it, Really
well,
is.
and actually that kind of goes to my next question. That asked at your talk, you said, like, every day we need to live on the edge of vulnerability and courage to learn more about who we are. So what do you think holds us back from doing that? I think particularly in our field, it might be as the practitioner, you might be worried about the outcome, right? And how the person performs. But what do you think just generally for people, what holds us back from showing vulnerability and courage and learning more about who we are?
Yeah, good question. I think the number one culprit, and nothing is this simple as I'm about to say, but
Yeah.
humans are multidimensional and
Mm-hmm.
um, complicated. But
Yeah.
what I think that the number one fear for most of us is the fear of other people's opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the fear of judgment, critique, and then what would happen if we didn't measure up to the community or to the person.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we play it safe, we play it small, we play it in ways to fit in rather than to, um, to be authentic. And sometimes we don't play it to fit in, but we play it like we have to be something bigger, and we come in like in this almost over the top way. So there's strategies, right? Small versus too big. And it's, for me, whatever the response is, it usually stems from the fear of what other people might be thinking about us.
Sure.
And it activates, as you recognize, it activates the same centers of the brain that are ancient. And they are the same centers that are fight, flight, and freeze. And those centers, the amygdala, the limbic system, whatever, that when those things are online,
Mm-hmm.
then it feels like it's life and death, but it's really just potential ego death.
Right.
So, like being able to work with that space. And it's a funny thing because it's like intellectually, like what's at stake is just risk of ego, but it
Right.
feels like, because of all the physiological symptoms, that it's real, in the sense of my heart's pounding, my breathing rate has changed, I'm sweating in funky places, and all of that seems just like it does if we were being chased down a dark alley by somebody.
So give us some insight on how you've learned to not worry about other people's opinions.
Well, I suffered with that for a long time.
Mm.
And so at some point when you get to a place where you just make a decision,
Yeah.
and I think as people in our professionals in our field, is that our job is not to help people feel better, but
Right.
our job is to help them be honest.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's helping them with a bit more pain, feel a bit more pain. And so I just got to a place where it was like, like this just doesn't work anymore. So helping people get to that place is really a massive gift. So for me, I just got tired of it.
Right.
And that's how it started. It first showed up when I was 15 years old and surfing, showed up all throughout college. And then it showed up early in my professional life where I had this experience where I was included in this small little group of kind of up and coming sports psychologists. And it was this passing of the guard from the old guard to the young guard. It was this beautiful kind of 3-day experience. And then I wasn't asked back for the second year. And it just was like, wow, okay. And I just went into this place. Like, what did I do? What did I say?
Mm.
Well, I wasn't enough. I didn't measure up. I made all these stories up. To this day, I don't really know why. I mean, it's probably all those reasons. And then I just was like, I can't.
Maybe none of those reasons.
Maybe none. And then so I just said, like, this sounds so simple, but it's like, hey, you know what? I'm giving that way too much time and energy.
Right.
And there's two things. I want to go upstream to my purpose, and that's getting me away from purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly getting away from me, being free. And so, I don't know, just get tired of it. You face it enough, get tired of it.
I love this quote by Daniel Amen. And he says something like, when you're 20, you think everyone's thinking about you. When you're 40, you maybe seen it, you realize no one's been thinking about you. When you're 60, you don't give a darn what other people think of you. But I like the idea is just that as you age, I think you also realize no one's really thinking about you anyway. And so maybe that's also a reason to not care as much about other people's opinions. I appreciate that insight. So since we're talking about courage and vulnerability, I'm wondering if you could share about a time that you failed and what you learned from it.
It's a good question. And when I think about failure, I don't think about it like kind of scoreboard, success or failure.
Yeah.
I fail so many times throughout the day because I'm trying to figure it out. And so I just want to say it that way, that I'm not even sure of my failures.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's gone. And
Right.
like I might have said something in our conversation that missed the mark or whatever, but it's gone, and I'm trying to figure out the next. So
You're trying to stay in the present.
yeah, so I don't really think about it like a scoreboard in that way, like, oh, that was a massive failure. It's like, I think about it more like free, and then everything else is kind of substandard.
Okay.
And like, am I able to express myself authentically? And then everything
Yeah.
else is substandard. And I think about it more that way.
Mm.
And the substandard's fine. It's all part of it. You know, people talk about all the time, like, failure is part of life, get good at failing. And I think like taking swings is part of it. So get good at taking swings. It doesn't mean you're going to get a home run, a triple, a double, grand slam, single. It doesn't mean anything. It's just, but I'm going to keep swinging at it. And so I have a hard time actually thinking about it that way. And
Yeah.
then, but the way I do think about failure is when I know I have something to say or to do, and I hold back.
Okay.
And so that's the way I think about it. And I've just made a commitment to myself that um, that to me is way too painful. And
Right.
so,
It's painful.
yeah,
Yeah.
to say something artistically and gracefully, um, and to not do it when the timing calls for it, that's what I think is a failure. So,
And I think I was listening maybe to Tim Ferriss's podcast when you're on it. And I think I remember hearing something about, you said like failure is a time when you're not being authentic. And I thought that's a really interesting and cool way to describe failure, because you're right. Like, I think failure can in our society be, you score, you don't score, you miss, or you make the shot, right? And I'd encourage people as they're listening, what is your definition of failure? But
mhm.
so tell us about a time where, and I want to ask you this question a little bit more and stay on it, because sometimes I think we hear people like you and all these accomplishments, and we think, well, Mike's never failed. But can you think of a time where maybe you didn't speak up, and you wish you would have, and maybe there was some pain there that you didn't speak up?
Yeah, for me, it's like, I can just think like yesterday, like that something was happening in my home, and I wish I just had a little more patience and a little more grace. Like, it's not like it's a failure, but
Right.
it's like I wasn't able to
Yeah.
be be the man I want to be. And
Right.
so it's like these little thin slices of
Mm-hmm.
optimized substandard, optimized sub, it's like that. And I've spent way more time in the sub place than the optimal. But um, like, if you want to think about big frames, and I'm not trying to skirt the question by any means, but
Yeah,
in
sure.
big frames, but it's really like challenging because I don't think about it that way.
Yeah.
In big frames, it's probably the things that I don't even quite realize. Like um, I can tell you a good story. Is Okay, so I was given a really amazing business opportunity, and it was a good one. Let's just say, like,
Okay.
everything lined up to be amazing, and
Okay.
I took a little too long in pulling the trigger, and I
Mm-hmm.
was in the airport going up to um, sign the document, and it was about
Okay.
3 weeks of a negotiation back and forth, and I was going to work with a company. It was going to, like I said, without details, just trust me that this was going to be a game
Okay.
changer for my family.
Big
And
one. Got it.
yeah, and so I'm going up, I'm in the airport, and I'm going to sign the documents. And the gentleman called me, the CEO called me. He says, "Hey, good news or bad news?" I go, "Oh, gee," like, okay. And I said, "Doesn't matter." And he says, "Good news is I just accelerated my contract, and I got paid XX million dollars last night." And I'm talking about big dollars,
Yeah.
and just sub 100 million.
Okay.
And I was like, "Wow, that's great, good for you." And he goes, "Yeah, bad news is that the new person coming in he's probably not interested in working with you."
Oh.
Yeah. So failure, I don't know, but
Yeah.
certainly a lesson on moving fast. Certainly a lesson on
Hmm.
capturing opportunities when they're there and not kind of letting
Right.
them
Yeah.
slip through. And
Yeah.
so, and that would have been, like I said, a game shifter. But I'm not a material spiritual person. Like, so I took a next step in another direction and trying to figure that out the best I can, and it leads to wherever we are today. So,
And the lesson that you feel like you took from that is just being a little more quick with your decisions related to business, or what's the lesson you took from that?
Yeah, is you know, it was speed. It was a decision about speed.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the takeaway.
Yeah. So your podcast is called Finding Mastery. Excellent. So people should check out your podcast. What does mastery mean to you? And how has it
Yeah.
evolved? Like, as you've been, I know part of your interviews is asking people what they think mastery is. So I'd love to hear what you think, and then how has it evolved over, interviewing hundreds of people?
Thank you. It's been, we've had about 242 interviews, which is like I'm amazed that we're able to kind of crank through these things, and they are with people that are extraordinary. And so it took the first 100 and pushed them through a machine learning algorithm to try to make sense of the themes and the streams and the applied insights that were shared. And so I can share some insights from the science
Yeah, that sounds
perspective
great.
there. And I can also share kind of tonally, what I'm capturing and feeling by being through the interviews. Let me start with the last, and then we'll get to the science.
Perfect.
Is that, so when I first started, conceptually, I knew the difference between mastery of craft and mastery of self. And it's become just more apparent that,
Okay.
that how different they are and how strongly interrelated they are,
Okay.
and how most people are interested in something less than mastery, but they're interested in high performance.
Mm-hmm.
They're interested in, peak performance maybe, and that's certainly down below mastery. And it's more about craft than self.
Okay.
And so I'm walking away right now from the 240 some under the belt, that I'm more interested in mastery of self through mastery of craft.
Okay.
And mastery of self is really about self-discovery and the tools to authentically express yourself.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the space between the spaces. It's the nuances of who you are, as opposed to, kind of the thoughts about who you want somebody to think you are. And so that's the authenticity piece. And I'm also like really like, I wrestle with just how hard it is to describe what really goes into mastery of self. And so I don't have a framework lined up yet.
Sure.
I do know that self-discovery is a big part of it, and then mental skills are a second part of it.
Okay.
For the mastery of self piece. And I also know that from the research standpoint is that purpose is a big deal for most.
Yeah.
Most people that have been on the podcast that are truly committed to mastery, their purpose is clear. And I also know that those that write goals and are committed to like the structure of goals report having less absorption in their life, less flow state, if you will.
Okay.
People are, according to the research, they are connected to what matters to them. And they tend to care about other people and ideas more than, money, fame, and recognition.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
there's some interesting stuff there. And I think there's a surprisingly, it's easy to romanticize that people that are on the path of mastery are internally driven more so than externally driven. But that's not showing up to be the case. There are people that are, I think that gap is a little bit more shallow than we might think, meaning that people are internally driven and for both intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So that's an interesting bit of information for me. And then last thing, and I'll stop talking about it, is when I first started, is that I thought the clever definition of mastery was that game recognizes game.
Okay.
And meaning that,
okay.
What's that?
Game recognizes game.
Yeah, like
Okay.
that's how you can spot it. If you understand mastery, you can see it and feel it and observe it, like in somebody else. Even if you don't play the violin, but you understand what goes into making something complicated beautiful and something simple as it seems. And so if you understand it, you can see it. And so that's one clever way I thought to think about it. And then I started to learn so much from these men and women that it's not that simple. And it's more about like the goal is the path. as opposed to it's about recognizing it or something else. So mastery is the unfolding goal of learning, you know, it's the unfolding path, I should say, of discovery. And the further you go into something, it sounds so trite, but the further you go into something, the more you know you don't know. And so there's more to learn. And so I will say that there's been this theme of humility that it has been, you know, like so easy to catch. Like humility is just absolutely pervasive. And when somebody is struggling with it and they're more arrogant than they are humble, it just jumps right off the page. So.
So one question I have that I think about, I think this relates to mastery, but one of the things I noticed, particularly in the guys in the NFL who stay the longest, or at least can, stay the longest, they have this, when they're faced with adversity, they have this kind of like watch me mentality. And I want to get your opinion on that, because I see the ones that don't last very long. When, let's say, a newspaper article comes out about them and they're really critiquing the player, or there's a lot of negativity on Twitter or social media that they read, that they can let it sear their confidence. And I see them not stay around very long when they do that. So what do you think about this idea of, you know, kind of this watch me mentality, sort of like they can turn this adversity into, I'll show you? And do you think that has anything to do with mastery?
Yeah, sure. I think that it's a benchmark. It's a bus stop, if you will, on the path. I think it's really cool. I've seen it a lot with people when something is written or whatever. And like there was this write up on the Seahawks wide receivers a couple years back that they were pedestrian. And
Right.
they loved that. They're like, oh, pedestrian, huh?
Right.
And so it just sharpened them up a little bit. I think that though, there's a substandard nature to that a little bit. I think it's great. You can use it. It's fine, but it's an external driver for the internal, which is harder to sustain.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
it's better when it comes from within.
Yeah, that's a
And
good point.
yeah, so I think it's fine. It's good. And I need it sometimes too. It's like, it's hard to be 100% internally driven. That's a hard thing to do. And I will say though, when the external drives the internal, that what ends up happening is you fall potential prey to the external influencing the internal. And so let's say that somebody is bigger, faster, stronger, they've got better stats, they're on a roll, we're in home, that we're in their stadium, and you know, and there's an external hostile environment,
Right.
and it's influencing the internal. That becomes a little problematic if you don't have the right chip or the bite or the zest to want to, like, you know, try me type of mentality. So I think the strongest humans are the ones that the internal, that the external does not dictate the internal, but the internal dictates how they influence the external. It doesn't mean it's always going to go your way, but you are going to be you. And I think that's a big part of it. So I think it's fun. I love it. When I'm in it, for me too, like, it's like, yeah, good, try me, you know, let's go. And I wished 5, 7, 10, probably like 10 years ago now, I wish that there was a sports psychology competition, you know, because I read so much. I love research, and, you know, I'd love to have some sort of Jeopardy competition for, you know, stuff. And I'm not saying I'm going to win, but I'm going to give it a strong go. And so I would love something like that to see.
Yeah, well, we'll talk to Asp about that. How about?
Yeah, that'd be funny.
Can you tell us a story about a lesson that you learned either from a top athlete that you worked with, or performer, or a coach?
A lesson. Yeah, there's a couple big ones that just jump right out at me. One is the ones that I enjoy working with the most are the ones that get to the edge of their capacities, and they know that they're at the edge, and they know that the community is what's going to help them get to the next step. And so those are the most fun ones. It's like they've exhausted everything they possibly can get out of themselves by themselves or with a small community, and now they need a bigger community. And those are the fun ones because they're scared and they're nervous and they're anxious and they're overwhelmed, and they're like, I need to understand better and be better so that can express myself better. And so those are like the most fun ones. And it's a reminder to me, like, yeah, what edges are you running to? And like, when you get to the edge, can you dance? And when you can't dance, do you find the people in your community that are going to help you dance? So those are the most fun ones. And then the importance of trying to figure out the dimensional part of being human. And so there's a dark side, there's a cost to an outcome, living in a highly outcome-based world. And that balance that I'm not even sure I understand well enough is the balance between work and home. And I think to me, it's this mythical ridgeline. Like, it does not exist. And people talk about sacrifice all the time. And those that I've worked with that are tip of the arrow, best in the world at what they're doing, they don't see, like, they tend to love what they do. So the sacrifice is not more time in the gym. The sacrifice is a bit of loneliness. It's the knowing that you might be letting people down that you really do love, and you're letting them down. So it's that sacrifice. Then it's not the hard work that they're putting into the craft. It's the other more lonely parts of life that are that's the real cost.
So there was a few questions, lots of questions actually, that were submitted on Twitter. Let's get to a few. So one person asked, could you ask Michael, he says that you train 3 parts of a person, right? Your body, your craft, and your mind. And he's asking, could your spirit potentially be a separate means of improvement? What do you think about that?
That's a good question. And I used to I used to have 4, and then I slid the 4th one off to an asterisk. And so the only kind of literature that I can find for training spirit is from Saint Loyola of Ignatius, and he did some writings on it. And then that's kind of it. So if the person who wrote it can put me down a path, I really do want to understand it. And I describe myself as a spiritual man first. And the way that I'm coming at that conversation is that I can't be in connection or harmony or what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on the word, but I can't be connected. Let's just put a note on that, to what's true, beautiful, and good if I am not in the present moment.
Right.
So what keeps me from the present moment is the unconditioned nature of my mind, right? The inability to manage perceived or real risk. And so that's why I start with the mind, so that I can be at the present moment. And that's where true, beautiful, and good is expressed and connected to. And so that's how I get after it. And so I'd love, and like I've studied, from let's call it a thin standpoint, the 11 world religions, like not the depths that, I mean, they're so mystically beautiful, but I can't see another way about it right now. Maybe it's because I just can't see it, but I don't know how to do it.
I'll put the note on Twitter to the person who asked that question, and we'll see if he has any response to that.
Yeah, and hold on, Cindra. I think it's really a beautiful question. And I don't think, though, that the Bible, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, I don't think that those are the ways to train spirit. Sure. And so I think that those are ways to think about principles to guide thoughts and actions.
Right.
And the way to train spirit is to open up our ability to be in the presence of fill in the blank. And so that, for me, again, I don't think it's the spiritual tomes that are teaching training spirit, but I definitely could be wrong.
Another question that was submitted was, how do you convey the value of mindfulness-based approaches in sports psychology or in sport performance, especially with maybe football players who don't necessarily buy in, was the question. But I know a lot of your work is mindfulness-based. So what's your thoughts on describing that to somebody who maybe is unaware or just learning about it for the first time?
Okay, cool question. I think the first is living it. And it's kind of like, I know for me, when there's somebody that's got a way about them that's really interesting or attractive or inviting, like I kind of lean into it, like, what are they about? Like, what are they, like, how is that working?
Yeah.
And so I think the first order of business is living it, demonstrating it, living it. And what does that mean? It means being present. It means being highly aware. It means being a beginner and a learner. And it means being humbled by wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the first order of business. And the second is like, if let's create a scenario that a coach says, okay, and Cindra's going to teach us all about mindfulness, right? Like, how would you go about that? I think the first thing is to leverage, if you can, the people, their heroes, you know, that might be interested or might be down the path. And so if they've got people they look up to, or mentors or heroes in the zeitgeist from way back when or whatever, is to borrow some of that glow, saying, okay, I want to talk about something that's been around 2,600 years. Science is ridiculous. I'll get to that in a moment. But there are some of the best in the world who are talking about it. And I want to share what they're talking about, you know, and I want to show you exactly how they practice. And then it's borrowing the glow from the ones that are a beacon for it. And so that's like, I don't know, there's no right and wrong way to do it, but that seems to get people's attention a little bit. But I think the first one is the big one. Not so much the second one.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is 2,600 years, and here's all of the top performers that are talking about using mindfulness in business, in sport. So
yeah, and then I would say, just that you hit a good note there, is that I don't think it's necessarily like using mindfulness, but mindfulness is the way.
Mindfulness is the way. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the way that, you know, as opposed to this means to an end.
Right.
Like, the practice of mindfulness is the end in and of itself.
Right.
And that's why it's like the goal is the path.
Yeah.
And the goal is to be aware, to get to the present moment more often, to have moments of insight that lead to wisdom. And so it's those four components that are, I don't know, I just can't see another way through it, you know? So awareness of four things: thoughts, emotions, body sensations, and the unfolding environment. And when you have those, you live in the present moment more often because you're using mental skills to course correct. And then you have these aha moments, these insights. And with enough of those, you get down to what wisdom is.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, the gold dust is relaxation, but that's not the purpose of mindfulness. The gold dust is that you'll be a better executor in hostile environments. You'll sleep better. You'll whatever, does all the research stuff, but that's gold dust. It's not the gold.
Got it. Okay. Here's one more question that was asked.
Hey, Cindra, I want to say thank you for just letting me talk shop and kind of play and explore a little bit.
Fun.
Yeah,
I was like, we could do this for a couple hours, but I know
thank you.
I'm trying to keep us on track, but it's really hard because I want to go into the depth of a lot of different places. But given the time constraints, I know I can't. But one more question. So when you catch yourself going down the wrong path mentally, how do you reset? Meaning, what do you do?
Cool question. So it happens all the time, right? Because I've got old habits. I've got the way that I think about thoughts are, there's two ways I like to use analogies. One is that we've got these seeds, and whatever we water, they grow. And some seeds are more weeds, and some seeds are beautiful flowers. And, you know, I've got weeds that I've been watering for a long time. Like, I think about, you know, the seeds of anger, frustration, worry. Like, I've got those seeds too. And so when I notice that I'm watering one of those seeds, I can feel it. I can feel the difference between smelling a rose and the kind of constricting nature of a weed. And so it is the practice of mindfulness to gently, without judgment and critique, go, oh, I see what I'm doing. Come on back. It's like that's it. Like, oh, look at that. I know where this is going, you know? And so come on back to the task at hand, to a breath, to something that is concrete in this present moment. And the other way I like to think about thoughts is trains of thought.
Okay.
And as humans, there's lots of trains we can get on. And I know the destinations of many of the trains because it's my life, my mind. I've ridden on these trains most of my life, and I know what it feels like to get on let's call it the F train. And I know if I get on the F train, it's going to take me to a place that is like, I just feel all effed up, you know, like,
Right.
you know, so I know what that train smells like. And so when I notice that I'm on that train, I go, wait a minute, there I am again. And I say, okay, let's get off and get on another train of thought.
Right.
And so I wish I could put better handles on it, but these are the concepts that are just underneath the ability to put words to. So we tend to create metaphors, or like it's thoughts are like a running river. Okay, it's a metaphor because it's just underneath the ability to put words to that, where a image can't, image, you know, is doing it justice, but it falls below somehow. So it's as simple as just hello and goodbye, and on to the next. And then I spent a lot of time working on not being critical of myself.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm so grateful that you spent time with us today, Mike. So I'm really grateful for the work that you do. I think you help us all in terms of when you get out there with your work, it just helps grow the field. And
oh, geez.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm grateful for that as a practitioner, and I'm grateful to learn from you today and to ask you some questions that I've been wanting to ask you. So thank you so much for the work that you do, and just helping all the high performers out there. So
I love it. Hold on. Like, I love the vibe. Thank you for all of that. And I love the fact that you are in your community, that you're leading, you know, with curiosity and kindness, and you're leading with like shared practices about how we can become.
Yes.
And right now, I just want to say, so we're in the kind of the midst of the coronavirus conversation. I'm not sure when this airs, but just a couple notes if I could. One is right now is, I think, more than ever, there's a couple things that are evident. One, it's the first time in my life, your life, I've seen the planet fly in formation. The globe is flying, you know, our global community is flying in formation. Radical. The second thing is that right now is a fantastic time for those who are able to demonstrate what it means to be present in the face of an adversity and uncertainty, like lead, you know, and your whole community. I want to say, if you're switched on to these types of conversations, you have it within you.
Yeah.
To be grounded, to show what strength looks like, to show what a commitment to immunity building looks like. And so, like, your people, your community needs you. And so I think it's a very special time. I think it's a very hard time. I think there's a powerful flexion point that's going to take place for us. And we will be reminded about how important people are and how temporary life is. Yes. And we're going to need everybody in your community to stand up, you know, and to have purpose, and that purpose to take care of other people by showing them what it means to be strong and compassionate, and, you know, make discerned decisions about how to move forward. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I think what I took most from what you just said is me continuing to be a good role model for this as well, and for staying present and compassionate and building relationships. I do see it's part of my purpose to disseminate information about, or strategies or tools in a really practical way. That's what I know that I'm here for. You know, spend a lot of time really thinking about that, and thinking about what my superpower might be in terms of how do I help people. And I think right now it's a time where there's so much fear and anxiety and unknown. It can be really easy to live in the future and to not practice.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So what final advice would you have for people who are listening, Michael?
Oh, good. I don't have any advice. Like, you know, like I'd say, I'd say just my hope maybe is that people will triple down on getting to know themselves, and triple down on breathing strategies to, you know, I'm taking 500 to 1,000 deep breaths a day because I'm constantly being pinged with things that are alarm bells from outside of me. And so, you know, like I'd say awareness, breathing strategies, and then, you know, reconnecting to what purpose is for you right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you then, and just in terms of spending time today and being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Cindra. All the best to you.